intimately associated with one individual. It is a principle, a truth, an idea, an attitude, or a negative pattern which is unique to that person. And that person will have to try and explain it. If the symbols are morbid, if the situation is negative, then it means that the psychic pressure is very, very heavy. Sometimes these symbols are simply mathematical figures of the attitude the person is now trying to take. For instance, if he is in contemplation, if he is in meditation, if he's idealistically searching for something, the very mood itself which is moving him becomes symbolized. It may be that he is hoping that some good thing will happen, dedicated and very serious, so he sees light. He sees luminous things, which are the evidences of his own effort to become enlightened. The symbol may be only his own attitude at the moment, pictured mathematically or diagrammatically. Or it may be an accumulation of pressures within himself. But whatever it is, it means what it means to him. And the constant effort to have it explained is more or less useless. However, he will get all kinds of explanations if he approaches different people. Each may try to tell him what they think it means. But when they tell him what they think it means, what they are really telling is what it would mean to them if it had occurred to them. In other words, the symbol would be interpreted in terms of the person who is interpreting it, not in the person to whom it first appeared. Therefore, in religious symbolism, much of it is derived from Scripture. Much of it is taken from religious and philosophical art and sources. But always the symbolism is determined by what it means to the person who sees it at that moment or under those conditions. And one thing you can say, if the symbols are attractive and beautiful and pleasant, then the individual has achieved a certain harmony within himself. But he even has to be careful of this, because the primary purpose of all of this discipline is not simply physical or mental pleasure. It has to have to do with great and deep realities. And it must go deeper than satisfying the mind or the emotions. It must be a true expression of the internal life of the individual. So we go through all of these problems, and we find everywhere today a tremendous increase of pressureful symbolism. We find every day practically some new prediction appears in the press, some new threat usually. Most predictions today are negative, largely because the person doing the predicting feels negative themselves. If the person is afraid and he has a mystical experience or thinks it's that, it may be simply a fear experience. If the person is frustrated, it may be a frustrate experience. If it involves society, it may be revengeful, or it may be an effort to stand against the prevailing policy. But in every instance that we know of in recent times, the trend has been to represent the whole subtle subconscious of the human race as under tremendous anxiety, under great stress and fear. Therefore, a prophecy of doom, an effort to date a disaster, is very often wishful thinking. And time again, the disaster does not occur as dated, because the dating ties into something within the consciousness of the person and has been expanded to cover all society. Actually, the answer lies in the gradual correction of these ills by which the individual is personally under pressure and stress. Actually, however, if you think for a moment, you will realize that about the only way in which the present condition can be finally solved is for it to become unendurable. As long as there is an opportunity for the individual to do as he pleases, when he doesn't please to do the right thing, and get away with it, there will be no change in the social pattern. We will only have correction when it becomes obvious that there is no other answer. We will continue to exploit each other. We will continue to dramatize our own attitudes and commercialize our own theologies as long as this is possible, as long as it is within our capacity to endure the consequences of our own misdeeds. Therefore, the quicker things come to a head, the better off we will all be. I remember a man who I talked to back in 29 when we had the big crash in the stock market. He lost everything he had one day. He was wiped out completely. He had been margining, as so many had, and it caught him, and he was through. A few hours before, he'd been a wealthy man. Now he was a bankrupt. I talked with him, and I said, "What did you do when you found out you just lost everything you had?" Well, he said, "You'd be surprised what I did. I went home and went to bed, and I slept for the first time in 6 months." Now society is going to be faced with this kind of situation. It is only when something happens and we no longer can escape the consequences of our own mistakes that we can go home and have a good night's sleep. It's only possible to solve these problems by changing our own ways of life. And it's the same with the person who has a bad home life, who has children that are wayward, and consequently is loaded with psychic pressures and extroverts them through strange dreams and symbols. We're going to have these prophecies of dire circumstances until we stop setting up dire circumstances. We're going to fear for what we have as long as we are so tied to possession that the loss of it becomes the major tragedy in life. When society does make its major moves, as it must someday, it does not mean that people will all be wiped out. It means actually that people will begin to value what is truly valuable and will be able to sleep well. The Chinese had a saying that in the primary time of things, when there were only sages upon the earth, the sages all slept without dreams. And this is to a certain degree our problem. It is the pressure in ourselves that is not only luring us into difficulties, but also luring us into finding false panaceas, trying to find ways to get out of our troubles without changing ourselves. And there are always a certain number of persons willing to exploit this need. But when it's all said and done, they may make a quick profit, but the person who is over-influenced by them is still in the same difficulties. So I think it's very important in connection with all types of this kind of situation for the person to remain rather quiet and make certain rules and plans which he can follow. If you are interested in an organization of some nature or a group, do not allow yourself to be lured in on the ground of what it's going to do for you. Rather take the attitude that if you become associated with that organization, that you can do something constructive for them. Do not join to get, join to give. In a philosophy of life, do not center yourself upon a teaching of how you can be superior to other people. I'll rather take the attitude of trying to gain a knowledge which will enable you to help other people to be superior to what they are now. If you are interested in health, or if you're interested in harmony of home life and so on, learn or understand the principles behind these things. If you expect a more happy home, do the things to make it. Do not depend upon some trick. If you happen to have relatives that belong to different religions, this sometimes is a terrible situation. It can be very difficult, but the only answer to it for each person involved is to realize that we all have the right to follow the ideals that are closest to us. We have a right to have the religions in which we were born if we want them. No one should accuse us of being better or worse because of a religion. We should all do what the American Indian did, observe the person, and if his conduct was good, his religion is right. Don't go any further. Never question the right of individual to his faith, but look for those who live what they believe. They are the sincere ones. You are inclined, maybe, to the same problem. You may be trying to save somebody from the error of his religions. Don't do it. Help him to understand his own, and hope that he will help you to understand your own. But if you do help him to understand his, you're liable to find out a lot about your own. All these things work right back to practical common sense and not to some strange beliefs. And do not fall back into the witchcraft of the Middle Ages. Do not try to change people in spite of themselves or without their knowledge. Do not follow all of these strange systems that are now gaining vogue, and some of which are already in tragic difficulties. Be very slow to affiliate unless you are able to examine carefully, study thoroughly, and understand fully what is involved. A very important thing is to find out the source of beliefs. If you have a belief that is interesting to you, and it depends upon a revelation of some kind, it is your right and privilege to thoroughly understand that revelation. You have a right to know where any teaching originated. And if an organization refuses to tell you, then be careful. And if it comes from some source that nobody can explore, be still more careful. Because under those conditions, there is nothing that you can depend on except the validity of the revelation itself. And if this revelation is unselfish, helps you to grow to be a better person, promises you nothing but hard work and very little opportunity to get into trouble. If it is a dedication to the public good, you can give it another thought. But if it's something that is supposed to make you better than somebody else who hasn't got the entitlement to this revelation, be very careful. Because we cannot hope to allow faith to create a delusion or support one. We have no need to believe what is incomprehensible to us. We have no right to believe without question that which is concealed from us by other people. And in doubt, stay yourself. Be yourself. Try to grow according to your own light. Serve, study for yourself. Base your philosophy upon those teachings that have stood the test of ages. Recognize that in this universe, we're going to be here for a while, then we're not going to be here, and then we may be here again. If there's any part of the invisible world that we ought to know about, we'll be there to see it one of these days. And we'll also come back with a better insight as to what to do. Do not permit other people to over-influence you away from a natural, normal, Christian understanding of life. A simple, honorable integrity. Anything that takes you away from this is liable to get into trouble. So don't also ask other people to interpret your symbols. If these symbols are valid, there are excellent texts available on them. The symbol always is a mandala. It is always a meditation figure. If a symbol is presented to you under mystical conditions of some nature, it is your privilege to find in yourself the key to that symbol.